shown here. According to the schedule, we have a slight change because our colleague Ihab Maharma is not in town. So we asked him to record his presentation, and this is what he did. So if you don't mind, we will start his presentation first, and then we will be joined by other panelists. Before we start, I wish to thank you for coming here. Who's from Jericho? At least there is some presence. Although I see that this is a quality addition to the conferences of IPS to organize a conference outside Ramallah. And this is important, and it's important that you joined us from Ramallah as well for this conference. I would have wished for more presence from Jericho, but invitations were sent. So we hope that this kind of symposia will be repeated, not necessarily in Jericho, but also in other cities. I wish to start the session. I will not introduce the other colleagues because they will join us in the later session. Let's introduce you to Ihab Maharma. He is a researcher in the Arab Center for Policy Studies in Doha. He has a second MA in public policies from Doha Institute, and recently he about the experience of Palestinian technocrats in Arab policies. He has a presentation recorded, so I will join you in the audience until his intervention is completed, and then we will reconvene. In the beginning, I wish to extend deep gratitude to the Institute for Palestine Studies for organizing this important conference, and I wish to thank it also for providing enough room to young researchers to participate in this important conference together with prominent and world-renowned researchers. This study examines the Israeli policy toward the Jordan Valley and how Palestinians resist on daily basis. It provides a reading of this concept, its dimensions and tactics, focusing on the Jordan Valley. The study proposes the principle of daily resistance through a socio-political entrance that focuses on the resistance of the oppressed by Israeli colonizers, in addition to attempting to understand the impact of this resistance on the Israeli policy. The study examines the daily resistance tactics in a particular context in the villages and communities of the Jordan Valley in Area C. These include Bardala, Al Malih, Al Aqaba, Al Farsiya, Marshul, and Bidad, and Fasail, and Aloja. The study organized direct interviews with farmers, members, and presidents of local councils and activists in non-governmental organizations, amounting to the number of 10, including 9 male and 1 female, aging from 30 to 60 years. The sample was chosen based on three criteria. First, the geographic distribution. Second, the sample to disclose the tactics they use to resist the Israeli policies. And the third, diversification of the respondent, including farmer, animal welfare member of local council, and youth activists. The study argues that in the light of the absence of organized resistance by a particular party or faction, which is the up to bottom resistance, the daily or the implicit resistance from bottom up is the main unit of political analysis. This resistance is beyond the forms of resistance known at the Palestinian level and beyond the traditional concept of resistance and steadfastness. Thus, it imposes other dimensions rather than the unified dimensions of the definition of resistance in the Palestinian occupied territory in 1967. And this approach is more important in researching in an area where organized Palestinian forces are not present because it is under direct colonial Israeli control. The study aims to add a particular aspect of these daily routines to the studies of the Palestinian resistance, and therefore the theoretical discussions, in addition to the field work, which interviews revealed with the respondents from the inhabitants of the Jordan Valley, provides us with the possibility to understanding the uses of daily resistance as an incentive to revisit our forms of resistance and steadfastness against Israeli policies. In the first part, the study presented a theoretical introduction about resistance and daily resistance and steadfastness. Regarding daily resistance, it spoke James Scott about daily resistance as a concept to highlight a different form of resistance, and it represents a group of actions or approaches or even intentions to perform a particular act which is conducted away from the site of the state and beyond its control and away from the official parties, factions, unions, and any other organizational forms of resistance or even non-profit organizations. This resistance does not have clear modes like mutiny, protestations, demonstrations, revolutions, or any other known forms of collective resistance, but this does not negate that it has other individual or implicit and invisible forms by in order to flee irony, theft, fraud, lack of loyalty, and so on. He also mentions that this resistance is important in a context where resistance is a dangerous process. Michel de Sorto, who is the second theoretician on the concept of daily resistance, goes beyond the Scott's concepts, and he says that daily resistance is popular tactics, and popular here expresses the tactics used by the people, and he considers that these tactics express a popular action and it is achieved through the application of daily practices like moving, talking, and he believes that it allows the weak to come out victorious against the strong. And beyond Scott's definition, he says that daily resistance is not only linked to intention, but rather to the people's daily tactics used by the people in order to redraft the form of authority for their own purposes. And he sees that in this way, the authority is deceived tactfully. Asif Bayat views the implicit daily resistance expressed by Duterte on court as a model that cannot be applied to the policy of the street and quiet sneezing. And therefore, he saw that the daily resistance of the people cannot be described as implicit, invisible, and that it is a marginal form of authority. It is usually aggressive acts, even if it is demised on calm sneaking and competing with the authority. In general, these three theories concord with the resistance of the Palestinians in the villages of the Jordan Valley. They are not an exception to the struggle of the Palestinians against the colonization, but they innovated different forms of resistance which are closer to the peaceful resistance and which imposes new tactics other than the ones known in the Palestinian case. In the end result, the idea of daily resistance, in spite of its different forms between Scott, Deserto, and Bayat, and without delving into long theoretical presentation that was conducted in the study, it still provides us with an opportunity to shed light on daily tactics of resistance of the Palestinians in the Jordan Valley. And these tactics are not steadfastness, but rather resistance. And it does not mean that visible and explicit resistance expressed through demonstrations and the protests. This doesn't mean that this visible form of resistance is not an omnipresent form of resistance against colonization. And this implicit form of resistance among the people of the Jordan Valley does not mean that they are not resisting. This study also studied in its theoretical framework the concept of resistance and steadfastness and dedicated a part about resistance. We see three important approaches. There is a stream that sees resistance as a counter act and an opposing social act to respond to the authority and its hegemony. And there's another stream that sees it's an event that unfuels the energies of the people, where the people choose other alternatives other than imposed by the oppressing power. And a third stream views that the use of resistance by the oppressed is important. Why is it? Diagnosis of the authority. So resistance here is not a romantic state to understand and identify the forms and tactics of struggle against the authority alone, but also to understand and explore the authority. In this theoretical debate, we find that the contradiction in the studies on resistance is either understanding resistance its forms and formations, or on understanding the dynamic interaction between resistance and the authority. And here we see that the authorities do not identify the nature of this resistance, but it defines the possibilities of understanding this resistance and influencing it. And this is the main point to understand whether an act is resistance or not. On steadfastness, the study also proposed the presentations of Salim Damari, Najma Ali, Rim Habak, and concluded that the theoretical discussion has proven that segregating steadfastness and resistance in the Palestinian case is difficult to do. It is difficult to identify the forms accurately because of the interwoven forms of resistance and steadfastness against the occupation, and therefore it is difficult to speak of a particular culture of steadfastness and a particular culture of resistance. It is also difficult to speak of a separate culture of the resistant or the resilient. But thus, we should not view the practices of the oppressed romantically, but as only a form of resistance. But they are also used to express their position against the authority and to influence this authority. And this study considers this as a value added. Therefore, daily resistance, although it is feasible and slight and unrecognized to a certain extent, but many elements of this resistance lie within the daily life and inhabitants of the Jordan Valley, limiting resistance and linking it to particular forms and patterns, pushes for other forms and patterns of unorganized resistance, which exists in the daily life of the Palestinians and lead to change. And this alienates any understanding or deep understanding of the Palestinian oppression. In the second part, and I will not speak in detail here because the conference papers cover this aspect, the nature of the Israeli policy vis-a-vis the Jordan Valley. But this part concluded in a simple way that Israel has adopted several policies in the Jordan Valley which are based on confiscation of settlements, exploitation of natural resources, and preventing any natural development of Palestinian villages, demolition of Bedouin communities, and imposing restrictions on mobility and access, in addition to the displacement of the indigenous population, with the objective of imposing a colonial de facto on the ground, which aims to depriving the Palestinians from their rights and use of their natural resources. The study also, based on its review of many literature, it considers that we can describe the policies of the Israeli occupation vis-a-vis the Jordan Valley as policies that aim to of the indigenous population, that is the Palestinians, and to impede any development thereof, to force them to leave in order to annex this area in de facto to Israel. In addition to the daily violations, this is also a form of ethnic cleansing and racial discrimination. Therefore, Israel imposes security in order to protect itself, in addition to creating facts in the ground in which it collects political and economic gains by usurping the resources of this area and undermining Palestinian presence in this area. The colonial regime in this area was designed to pave the way for turning the Jordan Valley as a permanent settlement and a de facto situation, even if there is any proposal for any political solution. In the third part of the study, I examined the patterns and tactics of the Palestinian resistance against the policies of the settler colonization through field interviews. I divided these patterns and tactics in two parts. The first part was speaking of the cultural and social dimensions of this area, which is the Jordan Valley, and the second part was describing the dedicated to speaking of the forms of daily resistance. The study concluded in this part that the daily life of the Palestinians in the Jordan Valley reveals an important part of the story of the resistance, not only to survive on the ground and to preserve their lifestyle alone, but also to influence the Israeli policies in the Jordan Valley. There are common denominators among the people living in the Jordan Valley, which are based on cautious progress and long patience and ongoing resistance without any leadership and without any ideology, and among sectors which organize themselves and submit their demands to the hegemonic authorities using their own tactics, and in lands which the hegemonic power, that is Israel, considers illegal, and that it considers that this land is not allocated to these people. To clarify this point, this daily resistance in two forms. The first is derives from the culture of the people of the Jordan Valley, and here respondents show the importance of three issues: the culture of piety, resistance, and social cohesion among the people. Here I will speak of the piety, and I will not speak of resistance and social cohesion. According to the respondents, the oppression, displacement, or discrimination in the against the Palestinians in the Jordan Valley since 1967 developed a certain culture among the people, which is based on piety. That on piety, that means that you pretend to do something but you do not do it actually, and they believe that this form is useful in the Jordan Valley because of the particular status of the Jordan Valley and it's being under Israeli control, while many have Palestinian IDs. Therefore they are obliged to circumvent the Israeli authorities and Palestinian authorities together. Any agricultural or pastoral project requires approval from the Israeli authorities, and any organization of their educational or health affairs requires the approval of the Palestinian authorities. Many of them explain that this culture derives also from the deception that the people of the Jordan Valley has left because of the PLO before the signature of the Oslo Accord, and by the Palestinians after the signature of Oslo. In addition to this, one of the herders of animal wealth said that the geographic topography of the Jordan Valley, which is appropriate for herding and pasturage, and that it includes their wealth of animal heads, is a way form of protection and resistance against the Israel. The only way to defy the Israeli court decisions and the demolition of agricultural units is by expanding and construction without the observation of the Israeli army. One of the respondents from Bardala Council said that the collective punishment and forced displacement and discrimination exercised by Israel in the Jordan Valley is a real incentive to raise the awareness of the people in the village. We, as he said, we are the forgotten, and we live between the fire of Israel on the one hand and the fire of the Palestinian Authority on the other. In conclusion, this act of circumventing in the Jordan Valley resembles the concept raised by Scott about resistance through fraud. So the vulnerables here are the inhabitants of the Jordan Valley. They work from behind the back of the Israeli authorities to conceptualize a culture that helps them formulate a secret discourse in order to preserve their presence and existence in this area and to exercise their daily routine. We also find that this culture does not cross with the traditional concept of steadfastness, which means resilience, because the use of the Palestinians of a secret discourse that circumvents and goes around the declared statement and discourse of the Israelis gives resistance here a more influential concept on the Israeli process, and this is expressed in the rejection of the inhabitants of the Jordan Valley of the discourse of the colonizer. The other form in the tactics of the Palestinians in the Jordan Valley. The analysis will help us analyze two forms of resistance and to identify the circumstances that pushed these people to adopt this form of resistance. In the first form, I the weapons and tactics of the weak. The main characteristics of the weak is to use daily resistance by fraud and concealing. about concealing, and because the Israeli authorities increased their daily violations against the Palestinians in the Jordan Valley, so it is not astonishing to find the tactics of daily spread and at night. One of the herders of sheep with a big animal with whose heads increase every year to build barns for his sheep at night so that the Israeli army will not building. And he adds, he does not abide meter of water a week, and he transports other quantities of water at night. Regarding fraud, one of the sheep herders in Mahrud said he punched the pipes of water from the nearby settlement and connected the water to his community to provide for his sheep. After the This was before the Palestinian Authority prevented him from this and threatened him of payment of fine. There are similar acts in Barla and Al Oja. Based on the theories of Scott and Deserto, we notice here that many of the tactics used by the people of the Jordan Valley were showed that this is individual form, peaceful and concealed and invisible form of resistance, which goes through fraud, deception, and stealing, and thus the acts are tactics used by the oppressed here in the Jordan Valley to express their intention to survive and to undermine the hegemony of the authority. The other form is the peaceful sneaking, and here I see it: to sneak, to build and construct. The idea of peaceable sneaking is demised on a group of individuals who are interconnected through collective direct acts and behaviors and of disparate households. This pattern becomes a socio-cultural tradition among these individuals, and they endeavor through this practice to provide for their daily necessities. Correspondence from Bakhul and Al Farsi and Al Marha expressed that they are under daily violations by the Israeli occupation and surveillance. They live in areas which Israel considers most military zones. They have the right to land and not the settlers. The Israeli army uses the towers of the settlement overlooking their community to watch their mobility and prevent them from construction. He says, "You see this camera in the settlement? I know where it moves every day. When the camera turns to the other side, I start expanding my sheep barracks and barns and building new housing. If I don't do this, I cannot survive." One of the inhabitants of Al Maleh, opposite to Miskiyot settlement, after a group of settlers sabotaged his house and barns of sheep, that it is issue, quote unquote, the settlements want to displace us and we don't want to leave. And he says the settlers and the army don't want us to herd our sheep in the mountains because there are mines. And here he says, where shall I go to herd the sheep? And even if they displace me to Al Aqaba, I will return here. In another form of peaceful resistance, Al Hajj Sami from Al Aqaba village, which is a village that was established on a land that is considered as a military occupied zone, that this does not prevent the inhabitants of the village from building institutions, factories, associations, and provide water and electricity services to the inhabitants. He says, quote unquote, that he responds the daily settlement expansion by daily slow construction. In the light of this, we cannot deny that this slow and peaceable sneaking of the inhabitants of the population in the area is not a goal on its own, but it is a result of the daily resistance, and the inhabitants of the Jordan Valley benefit from working and constructing in this area as a public space, and here they defy the authority, as Bayat says. So, in conclusion, we cannot consider this peaceable sneaking as a goal per se, but it is an opportunity and a necessity that appears among these inhabitants because of the direct threat to their existence. In the last part, which I consider as an important question about this study, does do these forms and tactics affect the Israeli policy? Indeed, many of the daily tactics of resistance were criticized in many studies that address this issue as unworthy forms of confrontation. And there is a call against this daily resistance that is based on the assumption that this resistance is unorganized, it's individual, it is based on opportunism, and has no revolutionary repercussions, and that may concord and sometimes with the structure of the authority. About its being individual and unorganized, interviews in the Jordan Valley showed that providing utilities and construction requires concerted coordination among the inhabitants of the community, especially at night. About being opportunist, they say it is principled because it is biased toward the resistance against the colonization, which is a moral value. About not having any revolutionary attempts against the authority, it appeared that many of the activists of the Palestinian popular resistance have aligned with the inhabitants of the Jordan Valley in order to revive the concept of Palestinian return. And there are many examples about their Hijli al-Auda villages that were established and so on. In the end, the stories of the respondents and their persistence to survive, it's not only by remaining feasible alone, but by using tactics and or by quiet encroachment in order to build and construct in an area that is subject to direct Israeli control. It is a real model of daily resistance. In addition to this, the respondents here and through their daily resistance do not defy the colonial policy alone, but also aim to defy what was imposed by the Oslo Accords upon them and the division of the West Bank through cantons. And by reimposing themselves as Palestinians, we in this study do not consider tactics like reproduction or mobility among the isolated Palestinian villages and going through the checkpoints, or even if we respect them, we do not consider them as daily resistance. But we have examined tactics that have an influence on the Israeli authority, even if they are implicit and invisible. These tactics differ from the armed or peaceful formed or popular forms of resistance. And they also differ from the tactics of steadfastness that appeared in the First and Second Palestinian Intifadas. Thus, the struggle of the Palestinians today in the Jordan Valley cannot have a direct influence on changing the Israeli policies on the ground, but it guarantees for inhabitants of the Jordan Valley to preserve a private space outside the control of the authority by insisting on their right to exercising the life they want. Thank you very much, and I apologize for having spoken long.
An important intervention by Mr. Ihab, and I think there are so many things that are worth discussion. Okay, back to start. My name is Hadil Qazzaz. I work with an organization that is Oxfam, which works a lot in the valleys, and also I'm associated with the Palestinian studies since a long time. And here beside me we have Rona Johansson. Shall I introduce you? Okay, I introduce them one by one, then by names, and then when they speak. As speakers, I will give more introduction. We'll start with Rona, then Firuz Salem, and then Dr. Munir Fakhreddin, who at the end of the day will give us a summary, not only for this workshop, but for all of the conference the last 2 days. Starting with Runa. Runa, she is an architecture professor at the Royal Danish Academy of Fine Arts. She researches using politics in architecture, and she focuses on Palestine. And as understood from her, she made a study on Palestine, and this will be the subject of her paper. You are most welcome, Runa. صباح الخير وشكرا جزيلا على المقدمة اللطيفة وشكرا لمنحي الوقت لأتحدث هنا في
Time matters. Practices of resistance to house demolition concerns house demolitions and how time is a factor in this. So, Israel's practice of demolition of Palestinian houses poses one of the most immediate threats to a continued Palestinian presence in the Jordan Valley's Area C. Without a home, steadfastness can hardly be sustained. In the wake of destruction, reconstruction of shelter is both a human necessity and a practice of sumut in the literal sense. Since Israel allows for neither temporary structure nor permanent development, a central concern for the actors involved in reconstruction is the time scope of their interventions, both on a pragmatic and on a political level. So the task of this paper is to explore time as a factor for responses to Israel's de-development policies and practices. More specifically, the question is, how are rebuilding practices of humanitarian support and resistance formed by the politicization of time ingrained in Israel's practices of demolition? And how are these practices producing new temporalities? I will in the following present two actors who work with reconstruction of houses, yet whose responses are distinguished by their approach to the temporality of their interventions. The first actor is a humanitarian NGO that provides temporary shelters as emergency response. I will suggest to call their temporal approach as buying time. The second actor is a local grassroots organization, Jordan Valley Solidarity Campaign, which has resumed the traditional method of building with mud bricks. I will suggest that their temporal approach is to create a temporal loop, or a strategy of looping time. So, clearly, questions of time in relation to the occupation are not new. The temporal oxymoron, permanent temporariness, along with such terms as stagnation, impasse, standstill, deadlock, have become temporal axioms commonly used to express the political intractability of the Israel-Palestine conflict, in lack of a better word. The often heard juridical oxymoron, indefinite occupation, explicates the illegality of an occupation that has become tantamount to permanent. All the while, time is running out for a two-state solution. Simultaneously, underneath front-page politics, the reality of daily practices on the ground reconfigure the physical landscape and consequently redefines future prospects. Spatial and temporal dimensions of the territorial battle are, in other words, interrelated. The point I want to stress here today is that time is politically instrumentalized as a tool for spatial transformations to happen. First of all, the spatial transformations of the West Bank are quite simply happening over time. So, in extension, my argument is that time matters in a double sense of the word matter. It is not only the passing of time that is of importance, but also the material appearance of time, so to speak. And by that I mean that building materials, building practices, and the policies that govern them have temporal features which are instrumentally used. I will in the following introduce to the practices of the two actors and show how they work with and against time on a pragmatic and a political level. First, buying time. In the aftermath of house demolitions in the Jordan Valley, humanitarian organizations are called upon to provide assistance. This assistance is carried out in two steps. Firstly, the shelter cluster under OCHA, in cooperation with organizations such as the Red Cross, go to the site to carry out a primary assessment and provide emergency kits for the first 3 days. Meanwhile, other organizations carry out further assessment to prepare the second step of the emergency response, which is to provide shelter suitable for the following 3 months. Though emergency aid to populations and individuals in distress is regulated by international humanitarian law, and Israel is liable not to impede such aid, Israel banned the delivery of shelter and obstruct the organization's work. Back in 2014, I interviewed a project manager of an international NGO that provides secondary response. The NGO abides strictly to the temporal framework of emergency assistance. In order not to legally infringe on Israel's control over planning issues in Area C, the response must be considered temporary. It should not exceed the scope of 90 days, after which it is considered development aid as opposed to emergency aid. In accordance with humanitarian laws, the NGO built without permits and in correspondence with what has been demolished. The NGO is careful to stress that they only provide substitution for what has been lost. However, in the cycle of demolition and reconstruction, the substitution of buildings does not take place in a one-to-one correlation. According to the project manager, the funding provided to rebuild is insufficient for a full recovery of all structures. In consequence, the extent of Palestinian built space in Area C gradually shrinks for each round of demolition. Whether the response can be considered emergency aid or development aid is a distinction that is determined by the material qualities and thus the durability of the shelter. To ensure that the shelter is not a development project, which could be interpreted as a fact on the ground, the structure the NGO provides must be light and without a solid foundation, and the tent is evidently a topology of shelter that meets this demand. However, since Israel exempts tents from the category of emergency supplies, construction of tents is often obstructed, either by confiscation or destruction of materials, or through the issue of immediate stop work orders if the builders are caught before the roof is constructed. And after the roof is constructed, new laws are activated. So after the roof is constructed, new laws are activated, and an issued demolition order from the Israeli court is required. And this is a process which can take up to 2 years. In order not to get caught, the NGO builds during the night. Materials for the tents are unloaded at different locations in more secure areas. Afterwards, they are collected and distributed by donkey or other small means of transportation. The structure themselves take 3 to 4 hours to erect. So, taking great care not to be discovered when building, as we have also just heard, is not the only tactical consideration. The risk of immediate demolition is also dealt with by relocation of the new shelter. If the site allows for it, the new shelter is erected 100 meters from the site of the demolished structure. This reasoning derives from the fact that the initial demolition order is based on a GPS coordinate. By switching the coordinates, a new demolition order must be issued by Israeli authorities, which will take more time. By relocating on the ground according to the GPS grid, the NGO thus attempts to buy time in the legal bureaucracy. Buying time is inevitably a method of deferral that aims to increase the intervals between demolitions taking place. Yet relocation has the obvious spatial limitation of being dependent on available coordinates without a pending demolition order. If there is a large cluster of tents or shelters that have been demolished, relocation is not an option. Moreover, after several repeated demolitions, possibilities for relocation are depleted by the densification of demolition orders associated with adjacent coordinates. Ultimately, moving around to find safe GPS coordinates is not a viable strategy. It is a temporary measure with an additional side effect of gradually and round by round fragmenting communities, and by that also their social fabric. As efforts to carry out humanitarian assistance are continually impeded by Israel, there are now few organizations involved in aiding families in Area C. In 2014, the recurrent confiscation and obstruction of material supplies for aid caused the Red Cross to suspend the provision of shelters in Jordan Valley. In the same period, the NGO under discussion also started to change their practice by giving only partial response in certain areas and delaying some of their operations to see if they were being monitored. As the project manager remarked, quote, "We are more cautious than before, which is not totally the opposite of humanitarian work, but we cannot keep being demolished every time," end quote. In a recent interview with Fadi Shamisti, the current coordinator of the shelter cluster, Shamisti holds that the demolition rate in Jordan Valley is relatively stable, but the task of providing response has become more risky and difficult. The legal options are becoming fewer as Israel has activated new orders, which increasingly enables military officers to confiscate shelters on site. According to Shamisti, it is thus no longer possible for Palestinians to rely on the legal system to gain time, as time gained is not as long anymore as in the past. Israel does, on the contrary, win time when bypassing the duration it takes for the court to issue a demolition order. Additionally, in the words of Shamisti, many donors and NGOs see their support as a kind of capital investment. They are unwilling to invest in projects prone to destruction, and the heightened level of risk has led donors and NGOs to adjust their responses, for instance, by rather providing cash assistance or material parts for self-building. In some cases, they also avoid the most sensitive villages, even if the humanitarian needs are there. On a pragmatic level, in the NGO's response to demolition, deferral of destruction oscillates between compliance to law, as evidenced by the choice of temporary tents without solid foundation, and buying time in the legal system through territorial relocation. Yet since demolished structures are not replaced at the same rate as they are being taken down, and the intervals between demolitions are now shortened, this cycle cannot be maintained infinitely. On a political level, the temporal strategy reflects the donors and the NGOs, and also the Palestinian authorities' inability or even unwillingness to break with Israel's mechanisms of de-development. Though not deliberately, and though their work is essential and needed, by abiding to limits defined by Israel, NGOs' responses to cycles of destruction are in consequence a dead end, insofar as they are increasingly unable to provide the shelter necessary for presence to be sustained. So, looping time. The next actor I will present to you is Jordan Valley Solidarity. JVS was set up in 2003 as a network of local community groups and international sponsors and volunteers to support communities in Area C. While international donors and organizations generally abide with Israel's clause of not operating in Area C, except within the framework of emergency aid, JVS' position, on the contrary, is to underpin the ability of Area C communities to develop and be self-reliant. According to the current coordinator of the JVS campaign, Rashid Kudairi, JVS consider their activities to be a strategy that aims to develop communities and, in his words, quote, to protect the families so they can stay and resist more, end quote. On-the-ground initiatives of JVS target poor access to infrastructural amenities such as water, electricity, and roads, as well as the need for shelter and basic institutional buildings for education and healthcare. A mutual characteristic of JVS initiatives is the use of technologies from locally accessible resources, for instance by creating solar energy ovens and biogas reactors. In 2005, JVS began using mud bricks for construction as a part of their strategy. Over the years, they have built more than 150 houses. I will now describe how building with mud creates a potential material loop, and by extension, I would argue, a looping of time. Is a tradition to the area, but was abandoned in the 1950s in building with modern materials such as concrete. Mud bricks provide excellent material performances tailored to the warm and dry climate of. It is a readily available, cheap and eco-friendly material, thus representing self-reliance when constructing a house. Mud bricks are easily made from the soil on site by simply adding water and straw or pulverized limestone as binder. The mixture is either shaped in wooden molds or compressed in a machine before being left to dry on the ground under the sun, after which the bricks are ready to be used for construction. But as you might have guessed, it is not only the geophysical climate, but also the political climate that makes the reinstatement of mud brick building a worthwhile practice. In this context, notions such as sustainability and concerns the ability for to inhabit an environment marked by destruction. So therefore, the crux of the matter, as Kodairi assures, is that, quote, if Israel destroyed the house, we can just make new bricks and rebuild again and again, end quote. In the case of building in areas prone to demolition, building from mud enables a loop of demolition and rebuilding by reusing the very same soil as that which is targeted for destruction. While demolished concrete becomes building waste, demolished mud bricks may become building material all over again. In the village Fazia in the northern Jordan Valley, for instance, JVS have rebuilt houses after demolition 3 times on the same location. The repeated process of rebuilding with the same material means that the house is only temporarily lost, thus looping time to start over again in the case of destruction. To be clear, what I understand with looping time is the circumstance that the house is not built as a temporary structure, but rather as a solid structure that in its demolished state is the starting point for a new house. Similarly to the NGO's tactics of GPS location switching, JVS rebuild a few hundred meters from the demolition site where possible. However, JVS do not restrict themselves to replacement of what has been lost. Most importantly, included into their response is the construction of new buildings for development of the communities. Also similar to the NGO's emergency response, JVS try to avoid stop work orders by building quickly. In high-risk cases, they can build a small house within 24 hours. In their own words, quote, the velocity with which you build is important. It gives you a little more time before demolition, end quote, as a demolition order is needed for a proper finished house. However, unlike the NGO, JVS do not strive to comply with the idea that the shelter should be temporary in order to be legal according to humanitarian law. Rather, they strive for permanency. The former JVS campaign, Fatih Dirat, elaborated in an early statement on JVS's work as follows. Our reaction to demolition orders is to construct more. Our response to a house demolition is to reconstruct the house. The Israelis have succeeded in creating the country through facts on the ground. We shall create our own facts on the ground. According to Ktirat, the purpose is to surpass Israel's rate of demolition, Yet beyond that, also to circumvent Israel's strategy of creating facts on the ground by creating facts on the ground of their own, and to quote, rebuild Palestine from the earth upwards. The solid qualities of mud bricks are thus used to create a foothold which can consolidate a life sustained in situ, a literal practice of sumud steadfastness. Temporal strategy is on a pragmatic level informs the advancement of creating facts on the ground as a means for. On a political level, Earth becomes a matter of resistance to time running out by looping time through destruction cycles. Furthermore, JVS is to strengthen communities and provide safety to people through solid shelter, and to reject the barriers to development dictated. To this end, looping time is a means to grace for steadfastness, emphasizing permanency rather than temporariness. So to conclude, Israel's practice of demolition ingrains a politicization, juridical and procedural execution of demolition. Only temporary measures are, to some extent, to demolition response portrayed in this paper, indicates that time is indeed a key issue for both parts. Yet that the rebuilding practices fundamental space in how Israel's obstructions are dealt with. On one hand, the end game of deferring further destruction. On the other hand, JVS temporary regime by city and development. While the former spread from within through their commitment to create endurance through solid official support are in need of a political reconception of how they deal with the temporal suspensions. A first step towards this, donors and internations as well as the PA and push for permanent rather than temporary interventions. On a pragmatic level, it secures improved living conditions for the Jordan Valley to stay. On a political level, such a move would implicitly, if not explicitly, state a rejection of Israel's autocratic de-development of the valley. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Rona, for this interesting perspective. الآن مع الزميلة.
We have our colleague Fairuz Salem. Fairuz will also speak of resistance with a specific case study in the village of Qusra, the village of Qusra. Fairuz is a PhD student in the social sciences at PhD program at BZ University. She holds a master's degree in international studies and is a researcher in the field of everyday life in rural and marginalized areas of Palestine. Fairuz, you have the floor. Thank you for coming. I will take you to another model in which the colonized expresses itself and does not go to withdrawal, as was explained by Ihab. Over the days of the conference, we have addressed the question of methods to control space and what Palestinian people do for this purpose in Area G, in Area C. And there is a perspective which we need to focus on in the last session, is that a core part of the life of the Palestinians in Area C is the violence of the settlers and their violations, this state of fear and waiting, and that you wake up in the morning to find your car burned or to find abusive words written on the walls of your home. This is a daily reality in the life of the Palestinians in this area and in the areas of clashes with the settlements. In order to understand this reality and to be able to examine the mechanisms of interaction between the colonized and the colonizer in the periphery of the West Bank, we cannot understand these interactions without understanding the interwoven power relations. It is not a dual relation, marginalized and lack services, and that it is part of the power relations that stem from weak P&A services to and the funders and their policies which depend on raising awareness and the training courses but do not focus basically threatens the lives of the people. We will speak of settlers as the essence of the Zionist project and its implications directed on the lives of the Palestinian, because it comes in the form of the displacement of the people and the desertion of the land. The paper will examine the villages to the south. It's a commission of the resistance area, because we speak about demographic threat in these areas, orthodox religious settlements with daily attacks on the people. We must examine the by the population of this area to counter the attacks of the settlement. We will take the example of Kusra village. The paper is demised on the hypothesis that the like Kusra, where every individual in this community isn't to be part of the struggle against the attacks of the settlers in order to resist it. This contributed to the reproduction of a form of sumud or resistance that combines inactivity with activity. And there was of sort of non-normalization of settler violence, and that we will not remain under this daily violence. Brings us back to the fact that although there are practices on the ground, whether collective or individual, as we will see, we will see sacrifices given, sacrifices that may reach they come in the dismantling the colonial structure. So these communities remain under the political split created by Oslo, and the reactions and their effect remains temporary and non-systemic. The methodology of the study visits and interviews with the inhabitants. They preferred to remain anonymous. They are in the committees of this initiative, was the initiative of the safety committees, as they call it. If we want to set the conceptual framework to understand the concept of sumud or steadfastness in a village like Qusra, steadfastness or sumud is a changing throughout the Palestinian history. It took the form of as proposed by Ibrahim Daqqaq, where the of economic. There were experiences in the Second Intifada where there appeared a form of making sumud or steadfastness led to action rather than inaction, because there was an attempt to impose this inaction and remaining in the one place by imposing curfews and other forms of military checkpoints. So there was a culture of life what I'm proposing in the in the perfect bank where the land is the essence of the conflict, there were mechanisms of control that threatened directly the lives of citizens. Was a form of resistance that combined the practices which aimed to remain in the place and other practices with action in order to warn the colonizers that they do exist in this place. In order to understand how they interacted with the attacks of the settlers, we have to examine the reality of this village between marginalization and settlement expansion. Qusra is to the southeast of Nablus, 50% in Area C, and the remaining part is in Area B. Services provided to the village is very weak. They were connected to the water grid in 2014, that is 20 years after the establishment of the Palestinian Authority. There's an electricity grid which is confiscated and demolished by the occupation because it is not licensed. It is a village with 5,000 inhabitants with high employment rate in the settlements. We speak of about 40% of labor force working in the settlements. And when you speak with the inhabitants, they call the settlements of the Jordan Valley the Open University of Jordan Valley because in their culture and awareness, this is where they have job opportunities, which are by other universities or by the lack of services and so on. So now we will see the contradiction is that labor in the settlements, many of them at night work in missions in order to counter the attacks. Salim was established a military camp and then it developed into a settlement. There are two settlement outposts, and all of the threat to the inhabitants come from these outposts. The first is Ihya and the second is Kodesh Ish, and Kodesh is one of the people killed in a suicidal attack in Tel Aviv. So this is an indication of the size of violence exercised against the people's rights. The people, and this brings us a dimension in the first session of the conference. These outposts into the village through the village of Jalud, which is a village with large areas of land and very few inhabitants. So whether it be through legal violence and confiscation of land, demolition, and the other was by terrifying the people through settlers, burning their produce or poisoning their animal heads. So a few of the inhabitants, it was easy for all of these reasons to seize and expropriate their land. So this is the land in between the two villages. They have grapevines that were expropriated by the settlers. So the land is cultivated by the settlers, and it is said that some of them is in area B because they are sons of a member of Knesset, so nobody can talk to them. So that in their power in the Palestinian reality focuses all of the services and projects and labor is mainly in urban centers, and there is a state of internal migration from the Palestinian rural areas toward urban areas. Contrary to the settlement encouraging inhabitants to go and attacks of the settlers in a village like Qusra, it gained this symbol because of the activities of its inhabitants. If we speak of a place, it is associated to the people living in this place. If we remember the camp of Jenin, because there were events in the camp of Jenin, and they are associated to the people who lived in this camp for in a particular period of time. So it had this symbol from an incident which the people of the village called the Palestinian wedding. When they were able to detain 16 settlers, there was a series of repetitive attacks by the settlers and there were martyrs. But on a day, they could withhold 16 settlers. They hid them, and the PA and the civil administration came, and there were negotiations, and the inhabitants of the village could impose certain conditions. So we speak of weak potential. It is done through volunteerism, through ad hoc activities without any organization. This evolved into the so-called watch committees, and they aim to make the settlers feel that they are present. They go at night uphill and without any form of they go and light the overlooking hills. They stay up. They later on established a room to protect them from the elements and to protect their bags, because actually this area is open to fire. So these practices were supported by the village. Later, restrictions set back to the loop. We speak of something that is unorganized. They addressed the settlement violence as if they were but they considered illegal, but still the army protects these settlers. So villagers started to cope with prosecution of these young people, and it is difficult because these are workers, students, and employees. So there was a decentralized effort to create a general culture that everybody is supposed to stay alert and to be aware of the attacks of the settlers. They developed where the microphone of the mosque was a call of emergency state. When the mosque calls so that all the people in the village can listen, that there is attack against any farmer or any inhabitant, it is like the villagers said, it is like general alert. The students of the schools go out, women, men. So there is a sense of general culture. If this is a threat to one of us, then this is a threat to all of us. So they mobilize. So this stemmed from their need to provide a certain form of deterrence. And when you meet with the people, they say that there were few daily practices and there was a form of deterrence. On the other hand, as we will see, there was more violence by the settlers when they go to killing. If we speak of some other special practices which were linked to youth groups, we also speak of unorganized spontaneous framework where these young people would focus on land confiscation. Qusra has 90 suits against demolition orders and confiscation orders in court. So this is a very sensitive issue in this area. Qusra is on the road to the Jordan Valley, and this is why it is important for the Israeli occupation, and it is part of the security strategy for the Jordan Valley. So there were practices, in the Ottoman law that is still applicable by the occupation. If the land is left unclaimed for a certain period, they can seize it. So there were some practices to reclaim these lands and plant them, even if this is not their own land. So there were initiatives through the interviews where they went to make plantations in this land and to affect the space so that at least this particular land will not be left unclaimed, because if it's not seized this year, it will be confiscated next year. They also spoke that settlers deliberately take the lands near the inhabitants, although there are large pieces of land in between villages. They prefer to go closer to the population, because if one village falls, the next village will fall. And because there will be bypass roads and roads, so somebody will have access to the next village. So if take 1 dönum near a village, they will be expropriating 500 dönums behind it. So if we want to speak of practices, we can speak of a disappointment among the people there regarding funding or projects relating to land. To them, they see sumud or steadfastness as the obligation to remain on this land. And in order to remain on this land, it is not enough to have public awareness workshops and capacity building workshops. And this was expressed mainly by the women. Some of them work in associations and they say they pay us $1,000 to build a beehive. And if there's a problem with the beehive, if it is 10,000 will be distributed to 10 women so that we say that's the business of Palestinians in Area C. So they saw that related to reclamation and construction of agricultural roads as better to enhance their steadfastness, and they are able to network with members of solidarity movements here to go to projects with, although limited, because we don't speak of huge funding, but they needed agricultural uh, greenhouses to encourage people plant this. So they planted these greenhouses to facilitate the activity for the people and consolidate their presence. And when Palestinian and international organization placed Area C as a priority, but in the end result, there is violence that threatens the very life of these residents, and which is linked to the presence of Zionist colonization and violence in these areas. We have spoken of collective practices, but there are also individual practices. I'm sorry that after this wonderful picture, I have to bring you back to a gloomy picture. That these are sacrifices that are worth it, although they have limited effect. There are some space practices with the villagers spoke of martyr Mahmoud Oude. He owned a piece of land in Area C, which he had inherited, and he tried to convince his brothers to plant this large area. They refused, so he bought their shares, and he was going to make this agricultural project opposite the settlement to defy this colonial geography, which says that this is his land and this is not his land. And he planted the land. He received confiscation orders. Before he martyred, he was to testify in a court. Today, his wife is following up on these issues to prove her ownership of the land. He martyred killed by a settler in a school trip to the outposts were considered as student trips, and people would come as tourism activity to these areas. So they saw that he constituted a threat to these school trips of the students who came to visit these settlement outposts, and they shot him dead. He martyred on his land in the place itself. This brings us back to the talk that there are sacrifices on the ground, there's awareness among the people, there's the ability to see the practices and awareness of the people, but where will it take them in the resistance and daily interaction with the colonizer? But under the political split post Oslo and the space dismembering, it is in limited areas, and in spite of the sacrifices that may amount to death, they remain within this framework, and they do not, it's not parallel to the size of sacrifices given for this land. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Fayrouz. And unfortunately, unless, if there are questions to Ihab, we have no one to answer them unless his father wants to answer. Okay, I'll open the floor for questions before I give Munir to make concluding remarks. So if you have any questions to my colleagues to my right, please go ahead. I would like to commend you for your paper. This is great. And one of the good things made me feel glad. That is, the Palestinian people started something in resistance. But the reality is that the paper is just a form of challenge. In my view, it reveals issues, and the other thing, across these 3 days, the issue of working in the settlements is one of the main challenges that the Palestinian national movement failed to face. The issue of working in the, like the lady was saying that Qusra is resisting, then she would say 40% of the people are working in the settlements. This is against the Palestinian strategy itself in the very first place. And the second thing, it's clear that the objective is simply the displacement of Palestinians. Unfortunately, the Palestinian scholars who still keep on speaking about the notion of apartheid to understand the Israeli policies, they are unable to understand that we are not facing apartheid. It is not a conflict around an academic when you say it's apartheid, you are going towards South Africa model. When someone says that you are suffering a certain disease while receiving a wrong treatment, if we are facing apartheid, then we should come to a point to understand that we are unable to understand, to tell them that we are facing something called sociocide. It's not apartheid. No, we are not facing apartheid. The Jordan Valley is one of the major cases of such suicide. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I said, Ahmed, it's okay, doctor, go ahead. The issue of popular resistance and focusing on the narrative of the Palestinian Authority in Bil'in and other areas such as Bil'in and Qusra to mobilize people. I know in Beta, the Israelis were building a settlement outpost, and people every day would go to resist, and the Israeli army was asking the Palestinian public that give us some time to remove these settlers. So it depends on the public. It doesn't depend on the media or on the outside. Qusra, part of it, Bil'in is part of that, and other people who are facing the resistance. And so these are the models that we need to focus more compared to other areas to sustain sustainability. Thank you. Just a comment. Rone spoke about demolition of houses. What was important to me to take Al-Khal Ahmar as a model. She would cite certain examples of the issues that she mentioned. So Bedouin communities in general, maybe more specific examples. To be connected with the examples, to be connected with what she mentioned. And there was a paper to analyze the situation in the Bedouin communities. Because Bedouins, by default, they constitute the main paradigm or the focal point or central point for the Israeli policy of exclusion and the cleansing. So it could have been more beneficial if we can focus, if the paper focused on Al-Khal Ahmar or communities by name. Said and you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. When we speak about resistance and steadfastness, I say steadfastness without resistance is nonsense, same thing, the opposite. Palestinian popular resistance, some people believe that it's peaceful and strikes. No, popular resistance is something that comes from the public with all forms of resistance. When there is occupation, the public is resisting. The public uses all forms of resistance to force this occupation to back up. Also, the total boycott to the occupation, sports, all other areas, education, and all walks of life. But there are certain issues, like if a Palestinian who's suffering and he goes to an Israeli hospital, this is a necessity. But to go with an Israeli sports team to have a joint activity, then this is treachery and normalization. Also, for those who work within the 1948 territory, there is a need because there are not enough resources for the Palestinians to live. But the Palestinian private sector must provide at least 50 or 60% of what the Israelis are offering the Palestinians so that we can attract these Palestinians to work within Palestine. I encourage you to ask questions. Gaza now is suffering with simple means, with balloons, with noise. This is not terror, but the Israeli occupation is facing them with bombing and opening fire and targeting their limbs. There were children who were playing football. Now they don't have foot to play football. So these people, the Israelis have all forms of arms, and we need to force them to leave our land. Thank you. Try to ask questions. My question to Ronnie, as the issue of time and resistance and resisting demolition. In the second Intifada, there was those Palestinians who committed, who staged attacks. Time was not important. Like immediately, the operation will be conducted. Then Israeli collective punishment and demolition of houses. I saw our neighbor's house. They didn't even leave time for the family to recognize the remains of their son who made the attack. They didn't give them time to take their furniture or the basic things from their house. So where's the time factor here? in this collective punishment. Two or three comments, not on this session, but it's on the conference. Certainly, we agree that for the last 25 years since Oslo, we have been simply suffering and paying for transferring from the previous resistance to into attempt to find ways of steadfastness. And the way this has made us to deal with the settlers as if they are local residents. These settlers are about to be 1 million, and so they are just like the Palestinian villages. And unfortunately, accepting the principle of land swap has brought us to this state of affairs. As if it's the same thing. This is the principle of land swap was the cause for allowing the Israelis to expand in the settlements. This was a wrong logic. The basic point here that I would like to build on. Building a popular resistance model or expanding this yes, maybe time is important and what happens in Qusra and others. But 61% of the land is sea area. It's an area C, and there is no, yes, the Palestinian Authority is not doing enough, but can the question, can the municipalities be the incubator to face this situation? My simple question, to Fairuz or to Fairuz? These popular incubators, can they serve as incubators for the resistance models? A simple question. Yesterday, Mr. Ahmad, we spoke about models of resistance. And today we spoke about Qusra. The differences between two stages. Qusra is direct resistance, and the other model, which is destroying water pipes. Sorry, I'm in Jericho and saying this, or in the Jordan Valley area, but is the model that we mentioned yesterday, is it a coexistence model between the Israelis and Palestinians, and the Qusra one, where 40% of people work in the settlements? Is it another facet for this set of affairs or what? Dr. Munir suggests that we use this time in asking direct questions, because there are comments that are better after the presentations, because he will make a conclusion. So if you have a direct question to the speakers, go ahead. Good morning. It's not an issue of questions as much as it is an attempt to add to this situation, which is important, this important subject. When we speak about the Jordan Valley area and Area C, it's more than 60%. And you know, these areas, the security and civil control is in the hands of Israel. So Israel should be committed to provide all the needs for the occupied Palestinians. And the Israelis are not meeting their responsibilities towards providing education, health, and all the basic human rights. Unfortunately, we as Palestinians, we have acquitted Israel of these responsibilities. At the same time, Israel is impeding and hindering making any infrastructure or social structuring and making that as the responsibility of the Palestinians. We need to be clear that occupation must be costly to them. The occupation now is a profit-making occupation. Israel is making profit out of it. Okay, your idea is clear. Thank you. Again, if you have a question, please make it. Otherwise, keep it after Munir speaks. Omar, do you have something? Good morning. The clear question is that the Zionist thought upon which the State of Israel was established, which is to replace and displacement of Palestinians. Are we as Palestinians, do we believe in one thought and one way to end this occupation? The State of Israel is aged 70 years. Has the Palestinians come to the point to understand the reasons of why this state has continued to exist and the needs to get rid of the State of Israel? Thank you. Omar. Good morning. My question is to Rona. The relation between space and time. I am among those who contributed to focusing on the space, since I teach geography. But we know there is a relation between time and space. Time regulates the space in a way, and so I would like to hear more about the importance of focusing on time as related to popular resistance. And as an intervention in a dialogue on the extra interest of our people in the space. I'll give time to Runa and Rose to respond to the questions. 3 minutes. Then we will go to Munir. Do you have a question to Rona? Microphone. Good afternoon. My name is Suhair Zahran, a woman activist. My question is to Rona. Why she didn't mention Al-Khan Al-Ahmar, which is locally now facing the risk of demolition and displacement. Thank you. My question to Fayrouz. The issue of Qusra in particular. Why people are able to enjoy resistance or steadfastness, or why are they more noticeable than others? Is it maybe because Qusra is a poor village, or they are the most suffering? Do they face more suffering and displacement, or why? Microphone. I try to respond to all the comments and questions. The gentleman there, the municipalities as incubators to steadfastness. We are not speaking about municipalities, we are speaking about individuals. But maybe these individuals were active in the issue of resisting settlements. After they left the settlement, we continued being in touch with these individuals. Unfortunately, we're not speaking about the municipality, we're speaking about activists. And as a matter of fact, in these initiatives, they were rejecting to have any organization. And in the dialogue with them, when they had some organizations and factions with the guarding committees, they didn't want to commodify that. They wanted to keep that as something within the village that they need internally. And this brings us back that the issue of violence responds to the two questions. That's why there is a model in Jordan Valley different from others. I believe the issue of facing the violence of settlers, the Israelis deal with the issue of inclusion and exclusion. They cut off water from this side, then they come and make dialogue with them using Arab speaking or Arab speakers, because they want to keep this area as calm. Also, on the other hand, we are speaking about also settlement outposts with violent settlers. Like this one, her name is Nar Kodesh. She is there to make violence, to commit violence. So the response of the residents there remains in the framework of reaction to the suffering they are facing.
I'll take two of them together. The question of the gentleman beside you from earlier. So why you were saying it would have been good to use the case, and that Khan al-Ahmar would have been a good case, and you're asking why I'm not using Khan al-Ahmar. And there are no particularly good sort of eloquent answers to that. Like it's a decision that comes when I'm writing this paper. It's a decision not to take it in because I'm looking at the mud brick projects of Jordan Valley Solidarity, which I've been doing over several years, and I've not had this sort of. So this is a boring answer. I've not had the time to go into in-depth the Khan al-Ahmar case, but I believe that there are lots of resources here that will be able to do that. But I totally agree that this would have been the most topical case to look into at this moment. And that would also have strengthened, of course, my points to be able to go deeper into that research. So, yeah. For the other questions, which I think are also related on questions of time in relation to popular resistance, I would like to ask Omar to just like briefly, I did not get the last part of your question. So if you could just say it briefly in English, I would be happy.
I was just saying we are very focused on space, and your contribution of injecting time and forcing us to think about time also in relation to space is important. And I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about that with relation to the resistance practices that you have and the importance of time there in relation to space, not just different kinds of time, which you were talking about.
I think, but like you, since I'm an architect, I guess I'm accustomed to think about space and to look at space and try to understand space, often in its kind of its frozen representation of maps or buildings or images or whatever. So we can sort of see changes over time by comparison. And also in this conflict, it's such a pertinent issue that it's a territorial conflict, which we often think about as spatial. I think what made me start to have an interest in thinking about time is that there are so many. One thing is that there are so many temporal oxymorons That's sort of like this permanent temporariness and so on. It's a standstill, deadlock. Which I believe we often talk about as something which is happening on the higher levels, sort of a higher, like a top-down thing. There's a political standstill. There are someone in authority that are dragging this out, and we are also aware that all the while these things are happening or not happening, Israel has the power to change things on the ground. So it made me think, so how do you respond to that? So I think in this first attempt, which this is, to think about time in relation to space and in relation to resistance, first of all, an attempt to analyze and understand how you would somehow also necessarily try to circumvent things over the course of time when you are inevitably under pressure. So I think what I found here to somehow to perhaps move a step forward in thinking about how perhaps these two strands, now we have the organizations, the NGOs, and then the grassroots organization work, how they are operating. They are operating sort of like in polar schemes. So thinking about how these two could enforce each other, I think would be fruitful for further moves for resistance, popular resistance activities, which would be to make use of the strength you have politically and economically when you come as an organization, but somehow import the will and the capability of circumventing certain operations and not transcending, but rejecting Israel's obstacles while you're doing that. So I think a combination of, I don't think popular resistance can go by itself. It needs to be strategized also through other sort of layers of power.
منير، بدنا نعطيك المجال تعطينا ملخص للمؤتمر. قد ايه بدك وقت؟ نص ساعة؟
معنا نص ساعة الجلسة، احنا 10 دقائق.
ما جاوبت على سؤالك؟
ضياء ما جاوبتك على سؤالك. طيب في مجال تسأل هالسؤال بعدين بالباص؟ اوكي. طيب عشان الوقت لانه اهم، انا برايي اهم من الاجمال واهم هي الجوله اللي راح نقوم فيها. نعم تسلم ضياء، شكرا. طيب انا مهمتي شوي صعبه انه اجمل يومين ونص من 7 جلسات في دقائق معدودة. بس كمان قبل هيك لازم أشير بأنه هذا المؤتمر أكاديمي كان، يعني أنا برأيي بدرجة عالية جدا، كان أكاديمي المؤتمر بدرجة عالية جدا، وأيضا سياساتي advocacy كان يعني فيه مقولات واضحة لأنه إيش لازم نسوي أو بأي اتجاه لازم العمل يكون، وهذا بيثير أيضا نقاشات مهمة. فكانت مؤسسة الدراسات تأمل طبعا بالجمع بين هذول الأمرين، وأظن البرنامج، يعني برنامج المؤتمر وصل هاي الغاية بشكل جيد. بس أنا بدي أشكر يعني جملة من الناس، كثير أسماء من الناس اللي شاركوا في التنظيم وخلوا هذا الحدث ممكن. يعني أنا بدي أبلش طبعا شكر جمعية الشبان المسيحية في استضافتنا، وجامعة بيرزيت معنا في التصوير. بدي أشكر الأستاذ عمر نزال وفريقه، حسني عبد الجليل وأمير حمايل ومصور جمال عروري، في الفريق التقني المساعدين حنان زهران، روز طه، راني، المترجمين اللي معنا كمان من البداية مهمتهم صعبة جدا كانت وأدوها بامتياز، ماهر عواودي، رانيا فلفل، شفيق خياط، أيضا معنا من طاقم
تنسيق لاننتيسي، ساندي ابو رحمه، زينه عريقات، جميله عويس، عبير الحاج، الاء حسوني، حسام ابو الليل، فؤاد العكليك، عائشه كراجه، ومي طبليه. ارجو انه ما نكون نسيت اي حدا. اكيد مشرف على المؤتمر وقرأ قدم مشكورين، منسق المؤتمر الأكاديمي الدكتور عمر تسدل، خالد فراج، هالة الشعيبي، عبد العزيز غدا المذبوح، على جردات، سليم تمامي. كمان كان معنا عدة طلبة من جامعة بيرزيت من برنامج ماجستير في الدراسات الإسرائيلية ساعدونا في أخذ ملاحظات وبعض الأمور اللوجستية. سحر السويتي، عبد القادر دويب، روان برغوثي، آيات يغمور، مدين شعبان. بشكل يعني زملائنا اللي خارج فلسطين، ستيفن جاستاير، إيثان مورتون، جيروم، ورونا جوهانسون، اللي سافروا على حساب وقتهم وعلى حسابهم عمليا خاص لمشاركتنا في هذا المؤتمر، كمان لغايات المناصرة. وراح نطلع في الجولة يعني الميدانية مع الأستاذ رشيد الغور، يفرجينا يعني الواقع عن كثب ولو في جولة سريعة. هاي نوعية هاي المؤتمرات وحضورنا لأريحة لاستكمال المؤتمر هدفه طبعا انه نجسر الفجوة بين الواقع والنظرية، التنظير والواقع. وهذا سؤال هو برأيي بلب موضوعنا في كل جوانبه. يعني حتى لما ننظر عن الاستعمار الاستيطاني شو بيعني على أرض الواقع، لما ننظر عن المقاومة شو بتعني على أرض الواقع. أحيانا بننسى إنه في ناس عايشين وهدول الناس بيعملوا الحياة. هلا في صراع في الاستعمار الاستيطاني يدور، يعني في مفهوم يمكن ما تداولناه في المؤتمر. هلا بحكي لكم شوي سريعا عن الأوراق، بس في مفهوم يبدو فاتنا في كل هاي الأوراق، اللي هو مفهوم النيكروبوليتكس أو سياسات الإبادة، قتل، سياسات الإماتة. لأنه إماتي بالمعنى أنه الصراع هو حول الحياة بين المستعمر والمستعمر في حالات الاستعمار الاستيطاني. والحياة لها درجات، الحياة ليس فقط حياة نفس وموت، إنما أنه كيف يخلوك عايش بنقص، عايش بحاجة، عايش بعوز، درجات العيش. يعني النيكروبوليتكس بتشير لأنه حتى الحياة مخضعة في أنظمة السيطرة الاستعمارية. الحياة البيولوجية، الحياة الفعلية مخضعة لمصفوفات نظرية، لإيش بتعني، يعني لها درجات علمية إذا بدكم. يعني من إحدى أمثلتها الواضحة جدا إنه الاحتلال بيحسب كمية البروتين أو كمية البقدونس أو كمية الفيتامينات بتفوت على غزة. هذا الصراع على الحياة هو مكمن الموضوع. والسؤال احنا يعني كيف يعني المقاومة تبدأ من هون واكيد تنتهي في التحرير والتحرير الوطني وتحقيق الإرادة الجمعية للشعب الفلسطيني. لكن وهي المسيرة، هي المساحة بين أنك تقاوم من أجل الحياة الكريمة على الأرض وتواجه الصعوبات اليومية، وبين أن تخرج من هاي المقاومة لأن تصل لمشروع سياسي كبير اللي هو استقلال وطني وبناء وطن. ليست مساحة سهلة يعني طويلة أكيد، ويقوم فيها الكثير من النشاط المهم والأسئلة الصعبة. هل كل هاي الفعاليات ونشاطات المقاومة على أرض الواقع تصب في الغاية الأخيرة أو لا تصب فيها؟ أظن احنا بحاجة لمنظور نظريا، يعني الحكي في المقارنة كمان بحاجة لمنظور أكثر ديالكتيكيا، أكثر جدليا مما أحيانا يعني نتحدث. وأقصد بذلك أنه الأمور قد لا تبدو أسود وأبيض في كل الحالات. في دراسات عن فترة تفكيك الاستعمار في أفريقيا اللي بتفرجي انه لما كانت العمال في المستعمرات بيطالبوا القوى الاستعماريه الفرنسيه وتحديدا هي دراسات عن فرنسا، طالبوها في حقوق عمال وحقوق نقابات وحقوق مدنيه. في هذا ليس يعني السبب هو جلاء المستعمر، ليس بالضبط سببه هذا الامر، بس هي في سياق اعاده تفكير المستعمر حول جدوى استعماره. بتيجي وفي سياق تفكيك الاستعمار بتكون هاي الصراعات ليست اندماجيه ولا تديم المستعمر، انما تطرده بشكل جدلي. فارجو ان ناخذ هذا المنظور شوي بعين الاعتبار، خاصه في النقاش، يعني في مناقشه قضايا مهمه حول الصمود، حول العمل، حول السيطره، حول الاخضاع. يعني العمل هو منظومه اعتماد يفرضها المستعمر على الفلسطيني، وبالتالي كيف نفهمها احنا بحاجه لهذا المنظور اللي شوي جدلي. خليني بس اعطيكم بسرعه ملخص سريع بدي ارجع كمان هاي لمنظومه الاستعمار الاستيطاني شوي، كيف بتفيدنا بفهم الواقع. المداخلات اللي تقدمت عددها 20 مداخله تقريبا، 20 مداخله او 19. يمكن تقسيمها إلى عدة عناوين. كان معنا أوراق من باحثين من الجهاز المركزي للإحصاء، الجهاز الفلسطيني المركزي للإحصاء، أوراق معلومات خلفية ديموغرافية عن أوضاع السكان الفلسطينيين في مناطق جيم وفي منطقة جيم وفي الأغوار، قدموها أيسر طعمي ونفير مساد. إحدى الأوراق سادي نفير معنا هون اليوم، وفي ورقة أخرى راوية علاوني قدمتها عن طبعا هذول الأوراق أثاروا أسئلة إحصائية مهمة جدا منهجية: كيف نحتسب الأغوار؟ أين حدود الأغوار؟ ما هي المنهجية أخذ المعلومة؟ إلى آخره. يعني هاي الأسئلة مهمة جدا. الأوراق لا نستطيع أن نخوض فيها الآن، لكن الأوراق ستكون متوفرة على موقع جهاز الإحصاء، الموقع الإلكتروني. وإحنا بمؤسسة الدراسات يعني نسعى نطمح لنشر كتاب بمخرجات هذا المؤتمر، وبالتالي راح تكون متوفرة للباحثين، بس كمان راح تكون عندهم على المواقع الخاص تبعهم. طبعا هم قدموا لنا نتائج عمليا، نتائج المسح الأخير في 2017، وأجروا مقارنات بين أحوال السكان في الأغوار ومناطق جيم، منطقة جيم بمناطقها المتعددة طبعا، مع باقي مجمل المعطيات المتوفرة حول السكان الفلسطينيين في باقي الضفة الغربية. كان ناقص طبعا البعد التاريخي، البعد يعني بالمقارنة مع الإحصاءات السابقة، لكن وعدوا طبعا بأنهم يطوروا هاي الأبحاث ويوفروها للباحثين. المعطيات دائما إحصائيات والأرقام تثير نقاشات كثيرة، إلا أن وجودها مهم جدا، ووجود نقاش حول منهجيتها مهم جدا، لأنه بيعطينا كمان indicators حول الواقع نوعا ما، لا تكفي بس هي ضرورية. كمان في نوعا ما في الخلفية الديموغرافية إذا بدنا نحكيها، بقدر أشمل ورقة الأستاذ أحمد حنيتي اللي أعطانا فكرة من خلال أبحاثه الإثنوغرافية الميدانية. أعطانا فكرة وربما هاي يعني بديهية لأهالي الأغوار، بس هي مش بديهية لكثير من الناس من خارج الأغوار، بأنه الأغوار ليست قطعة واحدة وليست متجانسة لا سكانيا ولا جغرافيا ولا من ناحية أنماط العمل. هناك وهو قدم تصنيف تمييز مهم برأيي بين حول مسألة ملكية وسائل الإنتاج وخاصة الأرض والمياه. فقارن بين بردلة وجفتلك يعني هاي المقارنات مهمة لتفرجينا أنه أحيانا في جماعات سكانية عندها أكثر مقدرة ربما على التلاحم والتعاضد الاجتماعي وتلبية حاجاتها، وأهم شيء يعني إنها تستغل مواردها المتوفرة القليلة من أجل أن تبني شيء نوعي. وهذا الجدل مع الموارد مهم جدا، ولا يمكن أن نوصل نظريا إلا في المعاينات الميدانية والدراسات القريبة من الناس. فبشكر أحمد على يعني هاي المداخلة. كان معنا ورقة في السياسات الإسرائيلية ومشروع ضم. إذا بتذكروا اللي معنا كانوا مشاركين، إنه مش رايح فيهم أنا بالترتيب كيف انعرضوا في المؤتمر، إنما حول الموضوعات. دكتور مهند مصطفى مدير المركز مدى الكرمل في حيفا قدم لنا ورقة مهمة جدا حول النقاشات الإسرائيلية الجارية حول موضوع ضم الأراضي الفلسطينية المحتلة عام 67، وحكى عن بازار برأيه باصطلاحه من الأفكار التي يرميها الساسي الإسرائيليين اليمينيين تحديدا وبعض اليساريين حتى منهم، يساريين بين قوسين كبار طبعا، حول أفكار متعددة حول الضم، وميز بين أفكار حول ضم جزئي وضم كلي، وبين أنواع من الضم بإعطاء حقوق إقامة ولا حقوق مواطنة، منع حق التصويت إلى آخره، أجزاء من الضفة مقابل أجزاء أخرى. يعني هذا النقاش ده يعني الشيء الملفت للنظر في آخر عدة سنوات، بأنه الساسي الإسرائيليين يتسلون عمليا، بيتسلوا بهذا الموضوع. وكل مرة بيطلع واحد وبيقول بيرمي فكرة في هذا الاتجاه، برأيه هناك مشروع يميني راسخ وبقطاعه العريض يتجه نحو إقرار، يعني نحو شرعنة أو تشريع أو قوننة الوضع القائم اللي فيه نوعا ما السيادة الإسرائيلية عمليا تفرض على كامل الإقليم الفلسطيني، وداخله ربما تحصل يعني تعطى نوع من الحكم الذاتي. وطبعا إذا بيقبلوا الفلسطينيين يسموها دولة بالنسبة لهم تمام، بس إذا ما بيقبلوا مهند مصطفى بيقترح بأنه الإسرائيليين اليوم لا يقيمون وزنا للفلسطيني نهائيا، لأنه تكلفة الاحتلال بسيطة جدا. بالتالي هنا الفلسطيني مخرج تماما من النقاش من هاي الجدالات. يعني الإسرائيليون يتناقشون بين أنفسهم حول الفلسطيني، وهو الفلسطيني مغيب لأنه وزنه الفعلي من ناحية مقاومة. يعني ذكر الأستاذ مسألة كلفة الاحتلال، ما خلينا يكمل إيش بيقصد فيها كلفة الاحتلال، بس أظن يعني خليها في إطار تكلفة الاحتلال لازم تكون أعلى لكي يجري المحتل، يعني بكافة جوانبها. فكمان ورقة مهند أظن مهمة لتوضيح إيش عم بيصير هناك في هذا الموضوع الخطير. في إطار الاستعمار الاستيطاني، هو إطار نظري مهم جدا، إطار مقارن يجعلنا قادرين على أن نرى القواسم المشتركة والأحوال الأوضاع المشتركة بين مناطق مختلفة في العالم، منها فلسطين، جنوب أفريقيا، أمريكا الشمالية، كندا، نيوزيلندا، أستراليا، وين في جماعات من المستوطنين الأوروبيين أو اللي يجوا من أوروبا أجلوا أو أبادوا أو استحلوا واستبدلوا السيادة المحلية بسيادة استيطانية. وهاي المنظومة كما يعني المطلعين على هذا الموضوع بيعرفوا تماما، كما اسمها أحد أهم يعني منظري هذا الإطار باتريك وولف، اللي كان رحل يعني قبل سنة بعد زيارة له جامعة بيرزيت، كان مناصر جدا للقضية الفلسطينية، وكتب بشكل مقارن عن الاستعمار الاستيطاني الصهيوني في فلسطين، في أمريكا الشمالية، في مناطق أخرى في العالم. وهذا الإطار يعني كان بيجيب التركيز حول، يعني هو عنوان مقاله المشهور نفي المستعمر elimination of the native. ما هي الأدوات اللي بيستخدمها المستعمر الاستيطاني للإحلال، للإبادة، لنفي المستوطن؟ طبعا هذا الإطار في عليه دراسات كثير، وفي يعني تصنيفات، تمييزات داخله في كيف، ما هي المعايير التي نستخدمها. وأعطانا ستيفن جاستاير محاضرة مركزية حول هذا الموضوع، محاضرة رئيسية في اليوم الثاني من المؤتمر، ودمج إطار الاستعمار الاستيطاني بدراسات التقنية والمجتمع، واقترح علينا بأنه الاستعمار الاستيطاني، وتحدث عن قناة البحرين، القناة اللي يعني يحكى عنها كثيرا للربط بين البحر الأحمر والبحر الميت، واقترح علينا بأنه الاستعمار الاستيطاني يقوم بإنتاج بسميها تكنو سوشيال سيستمز أو أنظمة تقنية اجتماعية. هاي الأنظمة التقنية الاجتماعية تسيطر على كافة حياة الجماعات السكانية، وتجعل الجماعة الاستعمارية في سيطرة وفوقية وتفوق وهيمنة على الجماعات الأصلانية. أهمية هذا التحليل بأنه بيقدر يفسر لنا بأنه الاستعمار الاستيطاني يستطيع أن يدوم بدون إبادة مباشرة وقتل عرقي مباشر. يعني وهي نقطة كمان باتريك وولف بيقولها، يعني الاستعمار النفي والسلب ليس بالضرورة أن يكون إبادة عرقية بالمعنى جينوسايد بالمعنى القانوني للكلمة. طبعا بالمقابل هناك، يعني بمقابل هذا الإطار، وليد سالم وربما مداخلة الدكتور صالح اقترحوا بأنه يجب أن ننظر إلى الغاية الأخيرة من الاستعمار الاستيطاني، وهي الإبادة والسوسيوسايد أو النفي والاقتلاع والقتل. بين هذول الحدين ربما هذا النقاش مهم جدا نفكر فيه. أنا برأيي الاستعمار الاستيطاني قادر بأنه ينشط دائما في تقديم حلول تقنية وسيطرة، تطوير أدوات السيطرة تبعه على المستعمرين. من ناحية ثانية في جدلية مهمة جدا، الوجود الفلسطيني. تخيل اليوم بالرغم من السيطرة الإسرائيلية على الأراضي الفلسطينية بين 48 و 67 بسيطرة هائلة ضخمة جدا، تتطلع أنت على عملية سلب الأراضي الفلسطينية من بداية الاستيطان لليوم. بتشوف انه الجماعه الاستيطانيه اليهوديه دفعت المجتمع الفلسطيني لخارج فلسطين او لبؤر لاجئين او بؤر سكانيه ضيقه، لكن من ناحيه ديموغرافيه لم يحققوا الانتصار الديموغرافي. من النهر الى البحر هم بيخافوا طبعا انه سيصبحوا اقليه بعد سنوات. فهذا الوجود ما بدي أعمل له يعني حالة مثالية، لكنه هذا وزن حقيقي. الوجود الفلسطيني على أرضه وزن حقيقي جدا. هناك قوة هائلة لدى الفلسطينيين في كافة المجالات، ويستطيعوا أن يعني يستغلوها ويطوروها. كمان في قضايا مهمة جدا لقضايا العمال. هاي موضوعها كمان مثير جدا للاهتمام نظريا وكمان انسانيا. يعني انت بتحكي في ورقتين تقدموا في هذا الموضوع، ايثان مورتن جيروم ومنار يونس. انا برايي يعني انا شوي منحاز لهذول الاوراق لانهم تحدثوا عن قضايا العمال في المستوطنات، ونحن بنحكي عن 30 ل 40 الف عامل فلسطيني في المستوطنات. اقتصاد الزراعي الاستيطاني في الأغوار، في الجولان، في النقب، في كل مكان في فلسطين بدكم يعتمد على العمال الفلسطينيين. يعني المقولة التاريخية بأنه الحركة الصهيونية تعتمد على العمل العبري والأرض العبرية والعمل العبري حكي فاضي. العمل الفلسطيني لكنه مستغل بأشنع الأشكال. وأكثر فئة عمالية تعمل، يعني أكثر فئة تستغل بدون أدنى حقوق إنسانية هم العمال الفلسطينيين، ربما في الأغوار. لأنه في مناطق أخرى ممكن يستخدموا القانون الإسرائيلي شوي ليكسبوا شوية حقوق أو ليخففوا هذا الظلم أو درجة الاستغلال. فالسؤال كيف نتعامل مع هذا الموضوع؟ إحنا يعني انعرضت أمامنا حقائق صعبة جدا عن إعاقات دائمة، عن اضطهاد، عن ظلم، عن استغلال، عن حاجة واعتماد على هذا المصدر من الحياة. هل ننظر لها على أساس أنها تقويض المشروع الوطني الفلسطيني، أم ننظر لها بأنها رافعة من روافع الصمود، البقاء، المقاومة، التي بالنهاية قد تؤدي الجدلية لتخضع المستعمر بأنه يا إما يتنازل عن الأرض أو يعني يغير في بنية السيطرة القانونية اللي بيستخدمها. فبديش أطول في هذول الورقتين أكثر، بس بتمنى أنه ننشرهم قريبا كمان للنقاش. ماريا فرح أصيل أبو بكر وزينة كيلاني أبو ميتا، ثلاث ورقتين تقدموا في إطار القانون. واحدة في القانون الدولي وأهمية استخدام مفاهيم حقوق الإنسان في إطار القانون الدولي، وتبينت هذه الورقة عن يعني استغلال إسرائيل للموارد الاقتصادية في البحر الميت، وحرمان الفلسطينيين من الاستفادة من مواردهم الطبيعية، إن كان في السياحة أو في يعني استخراج المعادن والأملاح الثمينة من البحر الميت. وطبعا هم بيأطروا بإطار أنه هذا انتهاك للقانون الإنساني الدولي، ويجب يعني طبعا هذا موضوع يثار كثيرا من قبل الجمعيات القانونية، والسؤال هو دائما لماذا الجهات الفلسطينية الرسمية لم تذهب إلى المحاكم الدولية؟ هل يعني يفتقد القانون الدولي إلى أسنان حقيقية أطر، أم هناك ضعف في الإرادة أو إرادة سياسية معينة من خلفها؟ هذا يعني صعب كنا نجاوبه، بده موضوع متخصص بحد ذاته، لكن تسليط الضوء على هذا الأمر دائما مهم. زينة كيلاني أبو ميتا حكت عن حالة في كندا لأحد الكنديين أثارها بخصوص بساغوت واينري، نبيذ مستوطن بساغوت. وهناك النقاش حول الليبلينج، تصنيف السلع الغذائية. فاستراتيجيتها القانونية بتقول إنه إحنا بدون ما نستخدم إطار البي دي اس المقاطعة والمقاومة، وهذا موضوع سياسي، بصير موضوع سياسي، لازم نشتغل على تطبيق اللوكال دوميستيك لو، القانون الكندي المحلي اللي بيقول يجب تصنيف البضائع الغذائية يعني هي حكت عن كيس موجود في أمام المحكمة العدل العليا الكندية، وقد يكون له تبعيات مهمة في حال طبعا أجبرت هاي المستوطنة على الوضع تصنيف دقيق لأين تنتج بضائعها. سيتم تطبيق نفس المعيار على بضائع استيطانية أخرى مثل شركة أهافا، وهذا برأيها سيؤدي إلى مقاطعة هاي البضائع من قبل المستهلك الكندي. طبعا هذا سؤال مفتوح، يعني سودا ستريم زادت مبيعاتها أكثر مما نقصت. هذا سؤال يعني بده متابعة، بس بده متابعة، يعني هذا من نوع الأشياء اللي بدها مش راح تخلص في نقاش أكاديمي. كان في ورقة للدكتورة سلوى مسعد وفريق من الباحثات حول الأوضاع الصحية للأطفال في التجمعات البدوية المعرضة للتهجير، وكانت المعطيات طبعا فحصوا فقر الدم والهزال، كانت المعطيات جدا صادمة حقيقة، اللي يعني بيقارنها في أخرى في فلسطين وفي العالم. طبعا دعت لأنه للنظر يعني لتوحيد الجهود الرسمية والجمعيات المعنية في مسائل الصحة، لكنها أشارت بأنه الإشكال الأساسي هو الفقر، هو الروت كوز، السبب الجذري لهذه المسألة، بالإضافة طبعا للشيء الأساسي اللي هو العنف الاستيطاني، لأنه هذول الناس مهددين بالتهجير دائما. سماهم يعني تسمية دقيقة عبد الرحمن تميمي في مداخلته بأنهم حراس الأرض الفلسطينيين، وأظن ذكرت هذه الملاحظة من قبل الجمهور اليوم، لأنه الإسرائيلي برأي عبد الرحمن تميمي في مسألة التخطيط القومي، الإسرائيليين يسعون إلى زيادة سيطرتهم على الأراضي الفلسطينية في الأغوار، في منطقة جيم في الأغوار بشكل محدد، بيتوقع انه خلال ال20 سنة القادمات راح يضاعفوا سيطرتهم على الأراضي وعلى الموارد، وبالتالي يشير إلى النقص أو استراتيجية فلسطينية متكاملة لمقاومة هذا السيناريو، وبرأيي سلطة أحد حول الأغوار اللي تقدر تجري عملية تنمية متكامل تنظر إلى السياحة إلى الموارد. إحدى الأشياء اللي اقترحها بشكل عملي جدا هو نقل كل ما يتخصص بتعليم المنظومة البيروقراطية الحكومية المتعلقة بالزراعة نقلها إلى أريحة، وبالتالي هذا بيجذب السكان. هدف همه الأساسي خوفه في توقعات مستقبلية من إفراغ السكان الفلسطينيين من الأغوار وزيادة سيطرة المستوطنين. يعني بيقول بشكل واضح بأنه في مداخلته بأنه المشكلة أكيد المشكلة في الاستثمار، لكن المشكلة الأساسية هي الفلسطينيون لا يؤدون مهامهم المطلوبة منهم في أنهم يغيروا الواقع ويتحدوا، وبيقدروا أمامهم كثير، لكن في حالة تقاعس، في حالة سماها رسم خمايسي أيضا في المداخلة الأولى بأنه يجب اختراق ذهنية أوسلو، يجب اختراق ذهنية أوسلو، يجب اختراق الموضوع اللي ذكره أحد الزملاء هون كمان بأنه ولاية إسرائيل في اتفاقية أوسلو على الأرض مقابل ولاية الفلسطينيين على بعض القضايا السكانية. هاي الذهنية يجب كسرها تماما. راسم خمايسي قدم ورقة برأيي تنسجم مع محور العمل الشعبي والمقاومة الشعبية، حكى عن تجارب في إجراء، لكن يعني من منظور مختلف، ليس من منظور مقاومة الخفية أو الزحف الهادئ أو المقاومة الشعبية غير الرسمية. هو تحدث عن شيء مهم جدا، وهو أن تدفع يعني الجماعات الأهالي، يدفعوا الأهالي الفلسطينيين في مناطق المعرضة للهدم، المعرضة للاقتلاع، في منطقة جيم في الأغوار، إلى إجراء تخطيط بديل وسباق يسبق المحتل. يعني لا ننتظر السلطة المدنية الإسرائيلية أن تخطط، لن تخطط، أن تضع خطط هيكلية بموجبها يمكن استصدار أذونات في البناء. فما العمل؟ ننتظر أو لا ننتظر؟ هل فقط نستخدم يعني الأساليب الشعبية في المقاومة، أم نقوم برسم خرائط هيكلية ووضعها على الطاولة، وفي نهاية المطاف إجبار الإسرائيلي أن يتعامل معها لأنها موضوعية علمية يعني تم كل اختبارات التخطيط السليم وفلسفة التخطيط في العالم. فبالتالي تقدر أنت لما يكون بإيدك هاي المخطط تقدر تقوى، يكون في يدك أوراق ضغط. فهو تحدث عن بناء وعي في هذا الإطار، وعي مجتمعي، ولأنه الهدف برأيه هو يجب أن ننتقل إلى موضوع بناء مجتمع بديل. طبعا يعني نضع هذا المقترح أو هذا التصور إلى جانب أهمية زوايا النظر اللي قدمت اليوم. برأيي يعني الأستاذ إيهاب قدم مداخلة ممتازة، وكذلك فيروز ورونا اللي فرجونا كيف أشكال المقاومة، يعني لا يقتصر الموضوع يعني على شكل واحد. لكن راسم خمايسي يعني يجبرنا بقول انه في امكانيه عمليا لاختراق حدود اوسلو المفروضه، لانه هاي الحدود في نصها على الاقل ذهنيه اقتنع فيها الفلسطيني وقبلها. الاسرائيلي حول اتفاقيه اوسلو لقفص لاداه سيطره واستدامه، بينما والفلسطيني قبلها وكانها قدر دائم. كان في ورقة من تفقجي، وليد سالم ذكرته، باقي تفقجي ومؤيد بشارات. خليل تفقجي جغرافي حكى عن يعني موضوعة الأهمية الأمنية للأغوار بنظر الإسرائيليين، وبيقول إنه هذا يعني رأيه بأنه استخدام الأمن حجة واهية أصبحت، إنما الهدف هو الاستغلال الاقتصادي وتقويض طبعا الوجود الفلسطيني وإمكانية الاستقلال الفلسطيني. ومؤيد بشارات حكى لنا موضوعا ذكرت أيضا في ربما ورقة رونا اللي هي دور المنظمات، وعند كمان فيروز اللي هي دور المنظمات الدولية الان جي اوز والدعم الدولي. برأيه طبعا، وهذا رأي يعني يمكن بحاجة موضوع بحاجة للنقاش أكثر، بأنه هذا الدعم الأجنبي أو الدولي عمليا يصب في إبقاء التبعية أو إعادة بناء وإعادة إنتاج تبعية الفلسطينيين لإسرائيل اقتصاديا، ويعمل ولا يتحدى الفهم العملي الإسرائيلي لاتفاقية أوسلو، يعني بيقبلها. يعني هاي أظن كمان انطرحت هون بالتركيز على مسألة إنه هاي كابيتال انفستمنت. يعني أنا ما بتحدى الاحتلال لأنه بخسر ماليا، يعني هذا موضوع مهم جدا. أظن أنه بحاجة ربما للتمييز أكثر لتفصيل أكثر حول هاي التجارب، لكن المؤشر النقدي هذا مهم جدا برأيي، هو راح يكون غالب في كيف نتعاطى مع بس كمان ما نهمل أهميتها. يعني في بدنا نميز برأيي بين تجارب وتجارب أخرى، ما فينا نحطها كلها بسلة واحدة مع اليو اس ايد مثلا. فهذا موضوع أشير له بحاجة لدراسة أكثر، لكن بالمجمل أظن هذا. نسيت شيء؟ ما نسيت شيء أظن. لا، منار يونس ذكرتها، منار موجودة كله. طيب يعطيكم العافية. أنا يعني أخذت الوقت كله، بعرفش إذا في مجال للنقاش هلا. إذا يعني شوفوا، هو الموضوع ديمقراطي، لأنه بعد ما أخذت منكم ربع ساعة من الغد، مش أنا يعني كل فمعنا 3/4 ساعة للغداء وبعدين جولة. أنا برأيي ما نتأخر بالجولة، فأرجو قصار لمداخلتين بس.
أبو إيهاب وعدنا
أبو إيهاب
وتفضلي وانت.
ثلاثة
وعدناك برضه.
يعطيكم العافية جميعا. شكرا لمؤسسة الدراسات. ويعني خليني أحكي من منظور منظورين بتحملوني. يعني المنظور الأول كابن الأغوار، المنظور الثاني كإنسان مسؤول كنت في منطقة الأغوار، كإنسان لازلت مسؤول في قطاع الحماية الاجتماعية في وزارة التنمية الاجتماعية. عرفش يعني أنا ما بدي أطلع متشائم من هذا الباب وأرجع على مخيمي أو على مدينتي. دكتور، يعني تلخيصك أنت لخصت أوراق طلعت، بس بعرفش يعني إحنا كمان لأنه بنحكي عن صمود، بنحكي عن مقاومة، بنحكي عن تحدي، لازم يكون في عناصر أبرايزنج فيها، وهي موجودة. يعني أنت هتزور المنطقة هلا بتفاصيلها بجذورها. أرجو ألا تكون النفسية إذا قابلت الناس معك تكون هيك. الناس حتشكي، الناس حتولول، باللغة العربية بقولوها ولولة ولا أبصر بعرف. فإخواني يعني في جوانب أبرايزنج موجودة بواقع الأغوار. ما بعرف هل الأوراق استعرضتها أو لا. إذا بدي أرجع على، أنا ما حضرت اليومين بس فهمت من تحليل الدكتور أو من اليوم اللي أقدر أقول هون خليني أسميهم 3 أوراق أو ورقتين. يعني الأخت فيروز وإيهاب والأخت هون بروح دونرز، هون بروح دراسات واقع ستادي كيس لحالات موجودة. استخدام الأسلوب التقية بالدراسة تبعت إيهاب ضروري استخدام هذا الأسلوب، لأنه أنت بواقع مواطن خايف، بواقع مواطن موجود بده يتحدى، ممكن. وأسلوب التقية شيء راقي إنه أنا أستخدمه في أي، يعني في الحالات اللي أنا بدي أحتال فيها على أي شخص، هذه واردة يعني، بس ما بستخدمه ضد نفسي أو ضد الآخرين في السوشيال ريليشن شيب، هذه مش موجودة طبعا. فهذا شيء واقعي. الأغوار بشكل عام، إذا أنا بدي أقول إنسان من الزاوية الوظيفية اللي أنا موجود فيها، لن قتلت القدس نهائيا في واقع أي شيء سياسي. هلا الورقة اللي تحدثت عن الحياة والموت واللي جرى، يعني هذا واقع موجود، مش بإيدي ولا بإيد من بلادنا سنة 80 نفس احنا نعيش ومليون. لكن اليوم احنا موجودين، ايش اللي الخطوات اللي احنا موجودين فيها من اجل الحفاظ كل الاوراق اللي من اجل التثبيت، من اجل الصمود، من اجل
شكرا ابو ايهاب.
هلا في مبالغات في الاوراق، اذا اعطوكم نسبه الصحه هيك هذا الفقر. انا لو بدي احكي في موضوع الفقر وانا كوني استلمت الاداره العامه للفقر، صعب، مش وقت ان نحكي في هذا الموضوع. لا بلاش تقول كثير الموضوع اللي ممكن الاخوان يعني اذا في حدا في الاغوار او شيء. قضيه زراعه البلح هي سواء تقليد لموديل اللي بدك اياه، السودان، اسرائيل، جارك، بس انا اليوم بحكي عن استثمار في موضوع البلح في الاغوار بالذات بالملايين.
طيب
خلينا يعني كميات
عشان في كمان مداخلتين وبدناش ناخذ
اوكي، بس انا ما بدي يعني الاخوان، بس ارجوكم حزوروا المنطقه، يعني
معلش
ما تكونوا متشائمين بالطريقه.
ابو ايهاب، انا بدات بكلامي بالحديث عن الفجوه بين النظريه والواقع، لانه الواقع اهم، واكيد وجود مؤتمر من هالنوع لا يدعي المؤتمر انه عرف الواقع، يعني لما يكون جهل هذا. بس احنا حضرنا حالنا بما نستطيع من اوراق نظريه حول الواقع، وربما استكمالا للمؤتمر ولو بزياره سريعه، وحتى هاي الزياره والمعاينات مش راح تفرجينا الواقع تماما. هلا موضوع البلح انذكر في احدى الاوراق، بس انا طبعا ما بقدر كنت الخص كل الاوراق بشكل دقيق.
يا سيدي تحمليني هيك ورقه اخيره، ارجو انه هذا المؤتمر يكون في شيء قادم، تحضير قادم، انه يكون في الاغوار كلها او في منطقه الاغوار برعايه المؤسسه الفلسطينيه للدراسات، بخبراء اللي بدكم اياها، ويكونوا مشاركين الفعليين، الناس اللي موجودين في الاغوار فعليا، يعني خلينا نقول شو تسميهم.
وصلت الرساله، بس بدي اخذ منك كرت ومعلومات عشان اتواصل معك، بس الرساله بنوصلها اكيد.
شكرا جزيلا. الدكتور غازي والاخت بعدين.
مساء الخير. الواقع انا يعني انظر بايجابيه للتلخيص اللي قدمه الاستاذ منير، لانه في النهايه وضع كل الاوراق باطار شمولي ورؤيه شموليه. هناك كثير من القضايا اثارت الاوراق، يعني لا مجال الواحد يتناولها. نتوقف اول شيء عند مساله اساسيه ممكن تطرق لها في البدايه الدكتور منير، حول فلسفه المقاومه في ظل الواقع اللي بنعيشه. احتلال موجود، سلطه تتمتع بوضع وتمارس بقيود، وحاله ميدانيه في يعني اشكال منوعه. هذه المقاومه اللي عرض اشكال منها، فلسفه الثبات في المكان كما تقدم، فلسفه الصد كما تقدم، موضوع نظريه سياسه الاماته اللي بمارسها العدو. انا بتقديري هذه مساله يعني، وارجو اذا كان أن الدكتور منير يعني البحث عنده أواني إنه يتابعها، لأنه فعلا إحنا بحاجة لنفهم هذه المقاومة في واقعها الحالي وين بتأدي، لأنه الوضع الميداني للمقاومة إنه في أشكال وفي طريقة أحيانا ممكن بتأدي إلى عكسها.
اوكي، ان شاء الله رح يكون متابعه طبعا للمؤتمر واصدار للاوراق.
أكمل يعني أنا ولا
عشان نحاول يعني باختصار عشان نسمع
لا
لحدا
والله أنا
ثالث.
بدي بس أحكي من خطين وفيهم اللي أحيانا بنكررها موضوع كلفة الاحتلال، إنه احتلال غير مكلف ولازم نخلي اللي احنا لما كنا قبل وصلوا في احتلال، الاحتلال مكلف ياخذ الضرائب ويكفي مشاريعه وما يقدم اي خدمات لمعنى اخر، ولذلك انا عم السود مفهوم شويه شعبوي وخاضع حول هذه القضيه، وهذا ممكن نتطرق له الاستاذ منير. الشغله الثانيه موضوع اسرائيل والمستوطنه، هذه احيانا قضيه هيك مفاهيم شعبويه. انا بتذكر احد الناس سواء من خلال عملي كوكيل وزاره عمل في فتره من الفترات او حتى في السابعة من خارج وانتهى، وقفنا في البدايه امام اسرائيل لما فتحت سوق العمل الاسرائيلي للعمال الفلسطيني، وناقشنا هذه المساله، وهي كانت سياسه مستهدفه من اسرائيل لتدمير البنيه الاقتصاديه، البنيه الزراعيه وبنيه يعني التكوين الحرفي وغيره. حاولنا نتصدى لذلك احيانا، يعني قام بعمليه تفجير كانت تنقل العمال، ولكن هذا شيء ثبت صار جزء من الواقع اللي بنعيشه. يعني حتى باتفاقيه باريس الاقتصاديه احدى النقاط اللي ركز عليها المفاوض الفلسطيني وهو استمرار حق العمل في داخل اسرائيل او في المشاريع الاسرائيليه عندما نص على حريه تنقل العمل. لو اصبحت الان اصبحت دوله
يعني
لا بس
عشان خاطر
الان اصبح موضوع
مش تطلع على الجوله يعني.
لا بس بدي اقول نقطه اثارها تركها بدون اجابه.
يعني احنا في الباص رح يكون عندكم فرصه للحديث.
بس يا استاذ منير
معلش بدي استسمحك، ما في مشاكل.
جزء من الصمود ولا عكسه.
اوكي شكرا. اختي بدك تحكي باختصار
بس مساحة جلاد. انا بس بدي اكد على كل المواضيع اللي حكت ونركز كريكومنديشن في المؤتمر.
أيوة.
على ما جاء في ورقه راسم خميسي. انا ما حضرتهاش بس من التلخيص.
أيوة.
وحسب كل القوانين اللي لها علاقه في الاراضي من ايام العثمانيين، اذا احنا بنستبق في المكان والزمان فإلنا الحق. لان كل اراضي فلسطين هي ميري اصلا، وحتى كانت ميري من زمن العثمانيين. اذا بتدخل ضمن حدود البلديه بتصير برايفت وملك. فليش ما احنا نستبق الاسرائيليين ونستبق المستوطنين ونحط الواقع على الارض. وانا بحكيها من منطلق خبير اراضي كمان.
اوكي شكرا جزيلا.
وخبير قوانين اراضي انها تنحط في الريكومنديشن.
شكرا جزيلا.
صحة الجلاد.
شكرا فيروز، يعطيك العافيه. شكرا دكتور. شكرا دكتور.